Okay, I am in a back room at TELUS World of Science where we've set up this thing. I should say we because my friend Jesse, my friend and a person who works here, and also my dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, that's right. He's helped me set up this thing. Well, I've helped him set up this thing. It is a musical Tesla coil, and I built an instrument just to play on it. This is going to be kind of a weird video, but I think I'm going to have a lot of fun.
This is our Tesla coil. It's a very fancy piece of equipment. There's a lot going on, but basically what we're doing is trading voltage for current. We want to create a very high voltage at the top of the device, and you can see we have many, many loops of copper wire. We have some very thick wire down at the bottom in few loops, and we have very, very many coils or windings of a very narrow wire in the pedestal in the middle, and then a few more windings of wire up at the top. The electrical interplay of all of this wire coiled around very tightly is going to give us an enormous voltage up at the top, which is going to send electrical charges out of this antenna, essentially creating lightning bolts. And when those lightning bolts go through the air, they're going to take the electrons off of the atoms in the air, creating a plasma, which is very, very hot. And when air gets very hot, it expands, and that expansion wave is going to travel out, and when it hits our ears, it's going to sound like a thunderclap. Now, by building up lots and lots and lots of those thunderclaps in a very, very precise way, thousands every second, we can actually create an audible note, and hopefully we can use that to make some music. So how does a thunderclap become a sound? Or how do many thunderclaps become a sound? Well, it actually all happens in our brain. If you think about a cardboard box with corrugations on it, if you run your fingernail very slowly across them, you'll hear each corrugation. But if you run your finger across very fast, all of those little pop, pop, pops, they build up in our brains into an audible note. They can be a lower frequency or a higher frequency, depending on how fast you run your fingernail across the cardboard, but all of the music happens in our brains.
So this thing is the world's one and only binary lightning flute. I know it's the one and only because I built it, and what it does is plays notes onto this thing that plays lightning, and that makes sounds. When I built this, I was intending it to be an actual flute, so that you would blow in and play the buttons. But this isn't very sensitive, so I'm mostly going to be playing it just with my fingers. I call it a binary lightning flute because these buttons correspond with binary digits, and that is getting translated into a number, which gets translated into a note, which gets played on this. A grand piano can only play 88 notes, but this thing plays 256, which is more than a human can hear. So I mean, it's completely absurd.
You actually play all these, or?
These go to 11.
Now, a grand piano can play multiple notes at a time, and it is way easier, I think, to play a piano than this, because there are 256 possible different finger combinations, and they don't seem to make any sense until you understand how the binary system works. The binary system is pretty cool. Basically, everything is either a 0 or a 1, which is either not being pressed down or the button is being pressed down. So that's a 0, that's a 1. So we use decimal numbers day to day, like 12 and 23. And the first digit in that is the ones column. The second digit in that is the tens, and then the hundreds column and the thousands column. But in binary, it's different. And each of these buttons represents a different column in the binary system, where each button has a value that is twice as much as the preceding one. So this is a 0 or a 1. That's it. So it's playing the number 0, it's playing the number 1. I've set it up so that the number 0 is A, and then suddenly this is A sharp. Now, this second button can either be on or off, but if it goes down, and it is the 2's column. So this will play the number 2. So suddenly it's playing a B. It's playing a B. So what we've got here is the number 0 when nothing's being pressed. That's an A. We've got an A sharp or a 1 when that's being pressed. When just this is being pressed, that's a 2, which is a B, and then we've got, if we add this, we've got a C, the number 3. And it goes on like that. So suddenly if I press this down, that's a 4, that's a 5, that's a 6, that's a 7, that's an 8, that's a 9, that's a 10, that's an 11, that's a 12, that's a 13, that's a 14, that's a 15, and so on, all the way up to 256. That's what makes the binary system pretty amazing, because you can encode a lot of complexity. You can encode 256 different values in 8 buttons, and they're not dials. A button is very simple to build. You can make a button just by pressing 2 wires together. You don't have to make a crazy potentiometer. It's something that you can build computers out of, and that's why computers use the binary system. That's where it all comes down to. We used to have to make computers with vacuum tubes that were just simple switches, but we could encode numbers and then math, and the entire language of programming is based off of that. But this thing just plays musical lightning because I can. Okay, so we just spent the last few hours setting this thing up and using it, and Jesse was really patient and listened to my horrible electric lightning flouting, and
It was great!
thanks. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a blast. And thank you, and thanks to all of Science World for making this possible.
Our pleasure.